several months ago, a foreign policy expert on the international level went to advise Donald Trump, and 3 times he asked about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 times he asked, at one point, if we have them, why can't we use them? That's one of the reasons why he just doesn't have foreign policy experts around.
Trump asked 3 times.
3 times in an hour briefing, why can't we use nuclear weapons?
All right, that was Joe's reporting from August of last year, and now there is new exclusive reporting from NBC News following similar lines. It surrounds a tense meeting with President Trump last summer that left top officials, quote, rattled about his understanding of national security. The president called for a huge increase in nuclear weapons. Shortly after, Rex Tillerson called the president a moron. We'll reveal the details first here on Morning Joe. Good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, October 11th. With us, we have veteran columnist and MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, MSNBC political analyst and professor at the University of Michigan School of Public Policy, former Democratic Congressman Harold Ford Jr. Good
morning.
Good morning. Washington bureau chief for the Associated Press, Julie Pace, and national political reporter for NBC News, Carol Lee, who is part of the NBC News team behind this morning's new reporting on what happened inside the president's meeting with top Pentagon officials. Joe, we talked about this during the campaign. That conversation was so disturbing on so many levels.
It was chilling, and of course, right after that, that's when you delivered your warning to the Republicans first and then to Americans who would vote for him, saying, if you vote for him, this was right. I think this was during the Republican National Convention or right after. At that time, he was a candidate, and a lot of people weren't giving him a chance to win, but you still issued your warning. And I can tell you the foreign policy expert that I spoke with afterwards was rattled. And the impression was, my God. The conclusion was, my God, could you ever imagine this guy getting his hands on the nuclear arsenal? And this, Mika, actually, here we are over a year later, and he does have his hands on the nuclear arsenal, and he is still, instead of disturbing top foreign policy experts in America, it's now his Secretary of State and everybody else around him that leave badly shaken, calling him a moron and worse for not understanding defense policy and the consequences of nuclear war. And so, here we are over a year later, and this is what we have. And now I think it's up for Congress to figure out a way to actually slow down the process in any way possible, to put checks on this man's ability to launch a nuclear war that could end up destroying a good part of this earth.
Well, and it's like Bob Corker mentioned, I believe on Sunday, saying that every day is an effort to contain him, and now we're getting a sense of just what that seems like. Why don't we begin now, then, with that NBC News exclusive on a tense national security meeting last summer that led Rex Tillerson to call President Trump a moron. The bombshell report cites 3 officials who were in the room and says the president called for a dramatic, nearly tenfold increase in America's nuclear arsenal, leaving his own top officials caught off guard. It came after the president saw a slide that illustrated the nation's nuclear stockpile, which has already seen a steady reduction since the 1960s. Officials were forced to explain the legal and practical challenges to a nuclear buildup. The president's position raised immediate questions about his understanding of America's nuclear posture and left some national security officials rattled about his grasp of other national security issues. Shortly after the meeting concluded, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was heard calling the president a moron. We don't know exactly why Tillerson said that about the president, but Carol Lee, we certainly could guess at this point. Tell us more about this explosive story and other details around that meeting.
Sure. Well, Mika, this was a meeting that came a day after the president had a meeting at the White House in the Situation Room where he equally stunned his advisors when they were discussing Afghanistan policy by comparing that process to the renovation of a New York restaurant. And so you follow that up, and they're now moving over to the Pentagon. It's a smaller group of officials, and they're giving him a briefing of U.S. military capabilities and assets around the world. So going all around the globe and saying, this is what we have here and here and here. And then at one point they show him this slide that shows U.S. and Russian nuclear arsenals from the 1950s until now, and it goes, like this for the U.S. And the president looked at it and said, well, I want that, I want more, I want that the most. Why don't we have that many? Which at its peak in the late 1960s was around 32,000 compared to the current arsenal, which is around 4,000. And so, the advisors were stunned and explained to him that the U.S. had these treaties and that was not feasible, and that there were a lot of budgetary restraints, and also that compared to the 1960s till now, U.S. military capabilities have advanced so much that you don't need a nuclear arsenal in that same way. And so, then advisors have told us that, people who were in the room have told us that, it wasn't just that. It was, as they went around the globe, the president looked at everything and said, I want more of that. Why don't we have more troops there? Why don't we have more, military equipment here? And so they had this 2-hour-long meeting that at times got tense, where they had to explain to him kind of how all of this went. And then, as we know, that meeting breaks up. Some officials lingered, and the Secretary of State was overheard calling him a moron. Now, we don't know exactly why, and I will say that there are officials who said that no one took the president literally, that he was demanding that the U.S. expand its arsenal, but it was more that the lack of an understanding of why that wasn't not just not feasible, but also just unnecessary.
Willie.
Carol, as you point out, as you researched and reported this story, Donald Trump has something of an obsession with nuclear weapons. He talked about it with the New York Times in a piece in 1984, actually reported by my dad back then, who wrote for New York Times Magazine. He tweeted in December of last year, the United States must greatly strengthen and expand its nuclear capability. Obviously, the U.S. is rivaled only by Russia in terms of the vast number of nuclear warheads it has. Were the people in the room concerned not just that he wanted the most, he wants superlatives, he wanted to have the most nuclear warheads, but that he was intent on using them? Did they take that next step, that he wanted to use them somewhere?
That wasn't necessarily, when you talk to people, it was more that, he just wanted more of everything. Let's just be the biggest and the best. And it wasn't necessarily drawing that link that then we'll then use all these weapons. But it's a very, we're starting to see this picture emerge of this president who that's how he thinks. He thinks in these dimensions of, well, let's be the biggest and let's be the best and let's have the most and let's outgun everybody. And not necessarily to use it per se, but just to show that the U.S. has all of this strength. And we've seen this not just in when he talks about defense issues, but really any issue.
Well, and Mike Barnicle, if you're sitting in the room with a new president who says, I want 10 times as many nuclear weapons, it shows a complete ignorance of what preceded you over the past 50 years, all the SALT treaties, all the START treaties, all the treaties that actually Ronald Reagan at the end, along with the presidents that preceded him. All of those hard-fought victories in all of those summits that presidents had, again, across the decades, to get our nuclear arsenal at a certain stage. And just to say, hey, I want to blow it up, goes back to the overlying problem. And I think the ignorance of this administration and well, I'll just end it at ignorance, that they believe, and I said this to them in real time, you guys believe the world began on January the 20th, 2017. You don't just wander into the Middle East and create peace. You don't just wander into Russia and reset the relationship. You don't just wander in to nuclear treaties and tear them up. But that's what these people have always believed, because and I say this, you can say this objectively, they are ignorant of history, and if you listen to what they have said in public speeches, they are contemptuous of history, and they are contemptuous of those of us who actually read history books to get a better understanding of history.
Well, Joe, there's certainly a lack of understanding of history among this group of people now running the country. And there is certainly, on Donald Trump's part, a lack of capacity to understand the role of the President of the United States, both leading this country and as leader of the free world. And Carol, around that table that day, you had the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford. You had Secretary of Defense Mattis. You had their staffs, professional military people, in a building populated more by doves, people who know what happens to it within war than anything else. But also at that table, I'm wondering, did you get any reporting about the reaction to others at the table with President Trump? Like Steve Mnuchin there at the table, like Jared Kushner there at the table, Sean Spicer there at the table, and Keith Schiller, basically a friend, a body man to the President of the United States, there at the table in the Pentagon. Any reaction among the professionals?
We have not. I mean, this story, just to put it into a little bit of context, it was such a small group, and it's so tightly held that we don't know exactly. And we're efforting to learn a little bit more about that. But we do know that at least as you mentioned, this is a gathering of the senior most military advisors in the Pentagon, and that they were taken aback by what the president said. Also, to set the scene, given all the officials that you just mentioned, this July period is turning out to appear like a real inflection point, even more so than we knew. If you added everything up, you had this meeting that came after this Afghanistan meeting that raised concerns among the president's advisors. At the same time, this is all happening when Anthony Scaramucci came in, when Sean Spicer was on his way out, when John Kelly came in, when Reince Priebus was on his way out, when the president gave that speech to the Boy Scouts that was widely criticized for being too political. So there was just this, and he recertified the Iran deal after many arguments with his aides, and so there was just a lot going on in this particular time frame, and so we don't know exactly what was going on with it in terms of his advisors, those advisors you mentioned in this meeting, but there was definitely a lot of tension at that time.
Staggering and unnerving. You can read the full exclusive report at NBCnews.com. Next hour, we're going to bring in NBC News national security and military reporter Courtney Kuby and the White House correspondent Kristen Welker, who were also part of the reporting team on this story. Also, NBC News chief White House correspondent Hallie Jackson contributed to the report, and she will be joining us. Savannah Guthrie also shares a byline, and she'll have more on this ahead on the Today Show. And of course, developments continue throughout the day and tonight on Nightly News.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.